Can you guys hear me now? If anybody in the if the people in the comments can hear me now, please let me know. I don't want to get I want to get too far into this before we can if nobody can hear me for some unver. All right, awesome. We got audio. All right. Okay, I'll start this over. Welcome, Cyclone fans, to another episode of I would say it's Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Levi Stevenson, managing editor over at Wide Right and Natty Light, and the commander of the Wide Right and Natty Light Discord. Hope everybody's having a good week. Closing in on the holiday season, and I would say football is currently in this kind of in between space where we don't know who's all leaving, we don't know who's all staying, we don't know who's all coming. We know one person that's coming, and you know, we're kind of in a little bit of a limbo spot there. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And we will also talk about the coaching staff hires that have been made so far by our good friend Jimmy Rogers over there in the Jacobson building. And if anybody didn't see today, I put up an article over on the website, which I will pull up here in a second, just kind of outlining all of the currently like known information, I should say. Let me just pull that up here real quick. Should have done this beforehand. There we go. Okay. So basically, we've got a number of transfers out that we are aware of. We've got one flip prospect that we know of, and we have a couple coaches that have been announced that we'll start with the players first, just to kind of get that rounded up. Then we will also talk about some of the coaches that we at least know are going to be in town, and a few of the other ones that have. We'll talk a little bit about some of the names that I don't want to like divulge premium information from a paid site or something like that, but just kind of like names that I've seen thrown around on social media and things like that. Just kind of talking a little bit about that stuff. So, but let's first start talking about the players that have been going kind of in and out, roster update basically. So on the way out, obviously Quentin Taylor Jr. We've talked about him before. Played a bunch this year in his redshirt freshman season. Go back up here. There we go. Mainly got forced into the lineup because of the injuries to Jontez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper, but he was gonna be. But I think he was always gonna break into the rotation a little bit at some point. It seemed like he was kind of I don't know if the favorite is the right word, but one of the favorites of the young guys to come in and be the running partner with Trey Bell. So I overall played pretty well. The thing to note with Quentin Taylor though is that obviously we were disappointed to see him leave just because he did play fairly well in his time that he got. But what's worth noting is that he was actually, I did not realize this until I think I read it somewhere. I don't remember where I read it, but he was actually removed from the roster before the Campbell to Penn State move was announced. So it seems to me as though he was already on the way out. Like he knew he was already going to be transferring. I don't know if exactly why, if it's wants to be closer to home or if there's a locker room thing, like an off the field type of issue. I'm not sure about all of that, about exactly why he's out the door. But based on kind of the timing of things, it's reasonable to suggest that it is completely independent of Matt Campbell leaving for Penn State. So this one was probably just always going to happen. Another one that was just probably going to happen was Josh Patterson, who definitely was definitely a product of the injuries to the defensive backfield. He played a little bit of safety, played a little bit of corner. He played all 4 of his redshirt games, but he didn't even travel to Stillwater for the Oklahoma State game and was, basically in the portal. So this is another one that was going to happen with or without Matt Campbell, without that situation happening. The other one more here that happened that we knew was going to happen well, I mean, it had already happened, was Markel Chapman. He came in originally as a transfer from Highland Community College down in Kansas, and he was originally supposed to be a depth piece on the defensive line, maybe behind Dominic Orange and Zamir Hawk, and what eventually became Elijah Carnell. He never played. I believe it was like halfway through the season, like late September, early October, he announced he was transferring. So, he's on this list because he was not, he was on the list he's on the roster at the beginning of the season, is not now. But he's, was a non-fact. He literally did not play a snap for Iowa State this season. So he was a non-factor. Not necessarily a big deal. Karan Brookins was the first kind of, or was one is, of these players we're talking about, is the first like Campbell leaving product. Freshman receiver from New Jersey. He committed over Pitt in West Virginia, I want to say. Didn't play this at all this past season. I don't know like where I hadn't, to be perfectly honest, I was not familiar with who this player was. He announced he was transferring, and I said, "Who is this?" And so I don't know where his standing was in the pecking order of like future playing time. It may be that he was getting ready to transfer anyways, because I hadn't even heard his name as like, oh, this is an up and comer, or he might play a little bit or something like that. Not to say that he can't be a good player, that he's like not worth keeping on the roster, but he clearly did not fit into the plans either this year and maybe even not next year at receiver. And 2027 might as well be a million years away at this point, just because of how college football works and how roster turnover and all that stuff works now. So it is what it is. This name right here is by far the biggest name that has put his name in the transfer portal / is thinking about it anyways, which is Zay Robinson from West Des Moines. He went to Valley. He, obviously, coming out of high school, highly touted prospect, had tons and tons of Power 5 offers. Got a little bit of playing time this season, especially on special teams. Had a chance to return a few kicks. Used all 4 of his redshirt games. Did not go past it, so he didn't burn his redshirt. He did announce. So, I would like put a little paragraph. He's like, if you're the type of person who leads into the tea leaves, he did retweet like 3 days after he announced he was transferring or like thinking about entering the portal. He did retweet it, it's a Cyclone state. So for whatever that's worth, he clearly like loves the university. The thing I want to point out here though, is he does say, I look forward to getting to know the coaching staff here at ISU as I go through this process. His aims hold a special place in my heart. So that at least tells us that he's willing to listen out to hear out the coaching staff and stay if he thinks that's a good fit. I think that's a great, I think that's a great thing. I don't blame him at all. He came here to play for Matt Campbell, so I don't blame. There's really nobody on the roster that I could really blame for wanting to go someplace else, because they came to play here for a different coach than is here right now. Some guys came here because they love Iowa State, because their legacies, whatever it is, and a lot of them came here because of Matt Campbell, and I understand that. So, but he's a local kid. I don't know if he grew up an Iowa State fan or not, but he clearly loves Iowa State. So hopefully he can keep Zay Robinson. Hopefully, Jimmy Rogers understands that he has a chance to be a really big part of this offense going forward. So I hope he is a priority as far as skill players. I mean, if you're Jimmy Rogers, you'd like to keep the whole damn team if you can. That will not happen, but you'd like to keep as many guys as you can. But I'm hoping, of the guys that have a chance to go to Penn State, which I don't know if Zay Robinson does. Maybe he does. Maybe maybe the coaching staff, maybe Campbell and Mouse really like him, and they want to just take him to Penn State. Maybe. I feel like if that were the case, he would probably have already announced some sort of intention to transfer to Penn State, even though the portal's not technically open yet. So I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but I would anticipate he's probably not ready to go to Penn State yet or anything like that. So of the guys that I think I would say has a really, really good chance to hang on to, I would hope that Zay Robinson is at least somewhat of a priority for the staff to retain him, because he's a big time athlete that he's just a year. he maybe next year he could be ready to really be a major impact player on the offense. Okay, so we're gonna have a little bit of not fun for a second here to talk about the unfortunately so far the for the lack of transfers that we have seen be announced, and we again we're really early into this process. There absolutely probably will be starters that announce that they're transferring at some point. I don't know who. I genuinely can tell you I don't have any like inside info as to like is Carson Hansen staying, is Rocco Beck staying. I don't have it. I don't have any inside info, and I've like if I did, I wouldn't share it with you. So that's where I'm at with it. This is just for the lack of starters that we've seen that have declared them to be transfers. We've obviously seen a couple guys that have said, I intend to enter the transfer portal. I'll see what's happening, but I will, we'll see how that all goes type of thing. So it's not like they couldn't, or it's not like there's necessarily a big reason for them to enter the transfer portal or to not enter the transfer portal right now, unless the only thing I can think of is if like Matt Campbell kind of has a shopping list, like, oh, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. And, they're just saying, they like, there's a kind of just this agreement amongst everybody. Like, yeah, these guys are going to go to Penn State, and there's no reason for them to publicly announce themselves entering the transfer portal right now, because they just kind of know that that's already going to happen. That would be the only reason, maybe. And that's, I mean, it's certainly possible, but that would be the only reason I can think of that guys who are gonna transfer would not have already announced some sort of intention to transfer. But for all the guys that we have not seen transfer out, we have seen a somewhat significant decimation of the 2026 signee class so far, including some of the highest rated recruits in that class, with a good chunk of these guys going to Penn State. Case Evans, the quarterback for the class. Now, granted, he was originally an Oklahoma State signee at the beginning of this recruiting class period, because Iowa State had Jet Thamala, obviously, who then flipped to Alabama. Mike Gundy gets fired from Oklahoma State. Iowa State gets Case Evans, and then now that Matt Campbell leaves for Penn State, Case Evans goes to Penn State. So, shout out Case Evans for managing to do really not much and go from an Oklahoma State commit, committing to a program that is way down right now, and was playing. It was just a lame duck program the last two seasons, and then falling back ass backwards into a Penn State scholarship, which is excellent work by him. And maybe he's not that's not to take away from anything Case Evans is or has done, but like to go from I started the season as an Oklahoma State commit to I finished the season as a Penn State signee. Notable thing there. Oh, Carter says, don't get me started on Jet and Milan. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of is what it is. From what I understand is the Milan Paris thing was kind of like the staff kind of couldn't believe that he committed to them as early as they did, because they just knew how good he was and how he was going to kind of blow up. And blow up he did. And obviously got he's huge offer and all that. Couple offensive linemen, Owen Winder, Pete Aglitis, and Ethan Beckman. Amarian Jackson, Cash Brock. I believe Amarian Jackson has already switched to Penn State. I'm not sure about Cash Brock. I've heard that Cash Brock may have a Penn State offer coming. Arlie Morrill is not at Penn State, but he's been kind of projected there. Kean Kaiser and Barry Freeze, I would imagine, will get looks for Penn State. I believe Tyrell Chapman has already committed to Penn State. I believe Bryson Williams has committed to Penn State. Lucas Tenbrock, the punter, has committed to Penn State. Arlie Morrill's headed to K-State. Okay. So there you go. So they got another tight end. Damn. Overall, though, I mean, just kind of a rough stretch there. I mean, with how things are, that was some of this was about to happen. Actually, one name I didn't, that actually came this afternoon since I've published this article that I need to actually update with, is unfortunately, Mr. Elijah Reeder, who, if you remember, was it just last week or 2 weeks ago? Maybe just last week already. Boy, this all moves very fast. I think it was just last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. where we found Elijah Reeder. We watched some tape on him and realized that this kid is just Will McDonald reincarnate. And unfortunately, this afternoon, Elijah Reeder also decommitted. Uh, and being from New Jersey, I would imagine he's headed to Penn State. But yeah, Carter. Some of these guys got some crazy ratings bumps by being targeted by Penn State. And it was like, if you ever needed a better piece of evidence to show that like certain schools offering just automatically involves a ratings bump, Elijah Reeder was an 87 on 247 when he committed to Iowa State. And now that he has a Penn State offer, he's an 89. And like Marion Jackson's like a 90 and stuff like that. Like a bunch of these guys got like multiple points added onto their star ratings just because they're headed to Penn State now. So, it's kind of wild if they had gotten these, Iowa State would have had like a top 30 class if these guys had those ratings bumps before they decided they were going to go to Penn State. Yeah, Jet was mid 200s ranked. Now he's 57 overall. I think he's like the third or fourth quarterback in the class. Yeah, I mean, some of these guys really, really, really just took off as soon as, not just as soon as we got them, but as soon as, other blue bloods started getting their hands on these guys. So, there are still a number of like good commits that are still, in this class as of right now. Mason Bandauer, the legacy offensive lineman, obviously son of Todd Bandauer, former Iowa State quarterback. He's still there. I haven't like heard anything like he's an Iowa State legacy, so it makes sense for him to just kind of stay there. But Campbell could also ask to take him to Penn State. We'll see what happens here. I think, unfortunately, and there's a 2027 too, which decommit, which is Will Slagle, which it's amazing how fast that went, because just a few weeks ago, or about a month ago, we saw him commit to Iowa State football in the tailgating lots. And now here we are. He's decommitted from Iowa State. And I would imagine that Clanton and Campbell will try to take him to Penn State with them. He's a really nice player. And Slagle is an Iowa State legacy, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep him here versus going to Penn State, considering he was talking about, like his initial commitment tweet was like talking about Campbell and Clanton and how they're not going anywhere and all this, which whatever. So Caleb Francois from Minnesota, the running back from Minnesota, let me pull him up. I want to let me pull up Caleb Francois. And I think what's notable here, what's notable about Caleb Francois is that he was specifically originally recruited to Iowa State by Tyler Roll, who is now the offensive coordinator at Iowa State. I believe he was finishing up the Lions like this week or next week or something like that, and then he'll be in town. But Caleb Francois is a really nice running back. He's a really, really nice player. I think he fit in the old scheme. I think he'll fit in the new scheme really nice. And Roll originally recruited him. I would be pretty surprised if Caleb Francois flipped. I mean, it's possible. I mean, the only offers were Iowa State and North Dakota. And the current OC is the one that originally recruited him to Iowa State. This one makes a lot of sense for him to stick around, especially just because I want to say it was earlier today, Ben Bruns, when he was on the CW pod talking about how he believes that Iowa State's offense will start looking a lot like the offense that like the Detroit Lions run, a more pro style offense. Caleb Francois fits a pro style offense really, really well. So I'm very, very excited to get him in there. I think he's going to be a really, really nice piece of this class. Now, so I would anticipate, just based on kind of vibes, I guess, that Iowa State would hang on to him, hang on to his commitment. Jeffrey Roberts is a local kid. I would bet he'll stay. I mean, maybe he talks to Penn State, but I would guess he'll stay. I'm not sure what Kean Kaiser has already decommitted, so I'm not sure why he's still on the list. Ajibole Afuye, would love to keep him. I don't know if he's like, I think Penn State's got a fairly I don't know. I think their defensive line could use some spots, but I think they can go after some bigger fish than Ajibolo Fuye. So, I don't really see a lot of guys on this list that I'm super worried about. Maybe Daniel Howard. Um, but the rest of these guys on the list, I think Jeremy Lewis, I believe he just decommitted like an hour ago. I'm not incredibly worried about him. An edge rusher out of a JUCO, which sometimes those guys just don't pan out. Maybe he was gonna, I don't know, but I think most of these guys they should be able to hang on to. I'm not really sure about like Josiah Zias. He's from New Jersey too? Is he a guy Campbell takes with him to Penn State? Because Penn State, generally speaking, like kind of owns New Jersey, like New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, DC, Penn State kind of owns that whole area. So, if Campbell wants to take Josiah Zias to Penn State with him and offer him a scholarship there, I would be surprised. I would not be shocked if Josiah Zias goes there, but I don't know if he will. Uh, a couple local-ish kids that Caleb that Tyler Roll helped commit. Hopefully, I think we've seen most if not all of the attrition from the 2026 class as far as like decommits goes. Hopefully, we do have though a 2026 flip, our first flip from Washington State, which Malcolm Watkins. He is from Bakersfield, California, which I believe is the hometown of Kamari Cotton Moya. Oh, yeah, it is. I put that note in there. Duh. Kamari Cotton Moya, also from there. He looks very much like if you were going to build like a route running slot receiver kind of guy. He's tall enough to play the X outside, but if you're thinking of like what receiver would I build to play in the slot in a pro style offense, Malcolm Watkins is pretty much right up there. Absolutely can flash on special teams a little bit. I'll pull up some of his highlights just here a little bit so you can see just a few of them. He actually plays a little bit of corner in high school as well, but here's him as a punt returner. He's not like blazing fast, but I think that part of California has pretty decent football. Good vision there. Kind of skip for a little bit. Good hands there. Good after the catch. Nice little run there. Overall, just a nice player for Iowa State. I think he's like an 87 on 247. Kind of terrible corner play there, but does a good job fighting him off. It just seems like a guy that can absolutely come in, he can compete in a room that needs to find some consistency. I like that as an early flip. So you'll notice on this list, I don't have in this article, I don't have a list of like guys that from Washington State that have declared themselves, potential transfers. I don't have a list on there because I don't want to speculate too much at this point in time. There's a linebacker from Washington State that also followed the staff from South Dakota State that I think would make a lot of sense for Iowa State. He'll already know the defensive system. Depending on what they think will happen with personnel wise at Iowa State, like transfer wise, like if they think Cooper Ebel or Mason Miller or whoever, if they think those guys are going to transfer, then yeah. So Polano is his last name. I watched some tape of Polano. I would love to get him. We'll see more. I think he fits. He makes a lot of sense. Right now there's not a lot of space on the roster for him. So, but if they are anticipating that, Cooper Ebel, Caleb Brzezina, Mason Miller, whoever, some of these guys, if they think that one of those guys are going to transfer and that there's going to be a spot, then Polano makes a ton of sense. Yeah, Redbird's exactly where I'm at on this one. It's like if you see a guy that went from SDSU to Wazoo and is now in the portal, you can probably make a fairly good guess that they're at least considering coming to Iowa State. Maybe they say that, I'm not, maybe they don't follow the coach because now they're in the FBS and they're in the division of football they want to be in, and they can maybe get other offers, maybe, but it would make sense for a lot of those guys to just stick with Jimmy Rogers. So we'll see there. Yeah, defensive tackle there last night. I've seen a couple other guys, pop up in our Discord. For anybody that's not in the Discord, I would highly recommend it. We've kind of been talking about it a little bit. Um, there was a couple like a corner, we had a receiver transfer, not just a receiver flip, but a receiver transfer potentially from Washington State. So lots of guys to keep an eye on this week. If we get more concrete like kind of info that they might be coming to Iowa State, I will probably get a list together for later for next week's show. We'll obviously recap any future commits and all that, but also see if I can get it together like a good list of like guys I really think have a decent shot at coming to Iowa State if they haven't already committed at that point. So we'll definitely go over that stuff next week too. But the more I see this, like, so obviously it sucks to lose this list of guys. Lots of really nice players in that list. And hopefully you see more of these flips from Washington State's class for whatever players they think are going to fit here. Overall, I kind of like where they're at with it. But yeah, so yeah, the South Dakota punter, his last name is also Ebel, and now that you lost to Lucas Tenbrock, they need a punter. So if they're going to go out and get that South Dakota punter, I think that makes a lot of sense. Seen some other transfers pop up that I think seem really interesting that we'll see if they are coming here or not. But I would guess we will see a lot of those move in the next, maybe around the new year. Because I think the portal opens like the 2nd or the 3rd. We may see a bunch of them, like a whole swath of them commit like that day. So we will see. They may not be like able to technically commit till that day. Not sure. And hopefully we have more clarification at that point on who is going to transfer. I did see a couple questions earlier that I want to get to. Let's see if I can find it. Like I said, have we lost the Iowa Nebraska pipelines Campbell built, or is it way too early to tell? I would say, well, right. It's definitely too early to tell. We're not going to lose the Iowa pipeline. Iowa's literally your home state. This group was at South Dakota State. South Dakota State makes its hay on finding gems, diamonds in Southwest Minnesota, Northwest Iowa, and really just like across the state, in the Dakotas and Nebraska and Minnesota and Iowa. Those programs live on finding those gems in Chicago, Wisconsin, things like that. They live on finding diamonds in the rough from those states. We're not going to lose the Iowa pipeline, or it's a home state. Maybe do you lose a little bit of ground to the university do you lose little ground to Iowa in the state that you had gained back? Maybe, but we'll see. I would say it still is a program, right? It's still a very respected program right now. That's in a much better place than it was. You don't have to sell that, oh, someday we hope this program will be a winner. It's like, well, this program has been a winner for the last decade, and we're just hoping to continue that right now. So you can still sell a program that's in a relatively good spot to be competitive going forward. So I am not super worried about that. Now the new kind of Nebraska Omaha pipeline that they tried to open up this year and did open up this year, but then it kind of fell apart. Obviously, now that Campbell has taken them to Penn State, that we'll see. Matt Rule at Nebraska has not done a great job of recruiting Omaha. Or really just local kids in general. So I think that opportunity for Omaha is still there. There's talent in Omaha, obviously. And I think the opportunity is still there because I don't believe Matt Rule prioritizes like local kids. I don't think he believes that kids from the upper Midwest are good enough to play for Nebraska. There's obviously some exceptions on the line and the linebackers and stuff like that. But I think just generally speaking, Matt Rule has a fairly significant disdain for kids from the upper Midwest. I don't think he thinks they can play. So I believe that the opportunity in the Omaha market is still there. Will Iowa try to capitalize on that? Maybe. But right now they have to answer to recruits and say, is Kirk Ferentz still going to be around, type of thing. So I think the Omaha market they'll need to gain that ground back, but I think it's still absolutely there for the taking. Iowa, they'll just need to kind of reassure everybody that thing, like having a good season this year, getting to 7-5 and at least, showing that they can maintain what's happening will go a long way towards, towards stabilizing whatever foundation I would say it's built in Iowa over the last decade or so. I think all of that stuff can be rebuilt slash maintained. Dukester says, who do you think is most likely to transfer? This is a great question. um, so, I mean, you look at the first place you want to look is the stars. The obviously the first name you're going to go to is Rocco Becht. The question there is there's to me there's three questions there. Is how much does Rocco love Ames? Like, does he want to stick around? He's only got 1 year left. He's familiar with the system. He's familiar with the school. He doesn't have to go anywhere. He can finish out and leave his legacy at Iowa State and be he can be one the second or theoretically first best quarterback in his school history. He still has a legacy to finish out here. His parents in the past have been extremely supportive of him turning down money to go other places to stay here and finish what you started. There's a lot of momentum to keeping Rocco and Ames. The other question here is, does Penn State like their existing quarterback who came in last year? And Andy Kotelnicki, their old offensive coordinator, didn't really do him a lot of favors as far as kind of showing off his arm and showing what he can do, but it seemed like he was a competent enough quarterback. The third part of this is, will Penn State try to go get a quarterback above Rocco? Will they go after Sam Levitt? Will they go after, I don't know, some of DJ Lagway or someone, if you think of DJ Lagway can be better than Rocco, there's a lot of good names in the portal right now. The quarterback transfer market right now is really saturated, and which could be a fourth factor in this is that, do they want to pay $2.5 million for Rocco when they can pay $1.5 million for the kid from North Texas or something like that, which he might just be falling to Oklahoma State. But, I we'll see. I'm a believer that there's a better chance that Rocco stays than a lot of people think, but we'll see. The running back situation, Penn State has some good backs there, but Carson Hansen is the most obvious one that seems like a guy that they would go after. Just because he had a really nice season here. His stock is as high as it's ever going to be. Like, the money he could make is as high as it's ever going to be. They would probably like to have a running back in the room that knows the system. But Carson Hansen's probably going to fit really well into this new system. He's fairly local. He's from Minnesota. So he's from the area. He's familiar. He's going to be he probably fits very nicely in the system. Iowa State would like to keep an experienced running back, at least as many experienced backs in the room as they can, because they're going to try to run the ball, especially with Tyler Roll. I'm sure. And the nice thing is that Tyler Roll would have been involved, or in the early part of Carson Hansen's career. So there's a lot of familiarity there. I think there's a lot of momentum to keeping Carson Hansen here, but that could just be a guy that Matt Campbell says, we're just going to way outbid anything Iowa State can afford. And that's just what it's going to be. Abu Sama is an interesting one. He's been at Iowa State his whole career. He's a local kid from Des Moines. He's been, I don't want to say buried, but he's been passed by Carson Hansen right now. He's the backup right now, I would say. Still gets still gets regular carries, but we'll see what that happens there. If he gets to the end of the spring camp and he's definitely behind, if Carson Hansen stays, maybe, I don't know. I don't know exactly what to do. What Abu Sama's head is at. He's got a lot of ability, and maybe in the right system he can really, really shine. Getting more carries, he can really shine. And maybe he decides, that if he can get 25 carries a game, he can be one of the best backs in the country, which I absolutely believe he can. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Receivers, I don't really anticipate anybody. Tight ends are an interesting one because Penn State actually is loaded at tight end. They've got three very, very good tight ends that they really, really like. Because Ben Bramer and Gabe Burkle would be two very obvious ones that they would want to bring along. They know the system. They're very good at their jobs. But Penn State has a lot of talent in that tight end room right now. Like whatever toys they could try to take from Iowa State, they've got that at Penn State already. So I mean, how many how many tight ends do they realistically need? Especially, Gabe Burkle's got 1 year left and he just exploded his knee at the end of this year. Who he might not even be ready, for fall camp type of thing. Ben Bramer's, I think he's going to be a senior. So like they've got 1 year left and they've already got 3 very good tight ends in there and they can get more good tight ends in the portal and in recruiting and stuff like that. So, it would make sense for them to take Bramer and Burkle, but their roster just might be so stacked with tight ends that they don't have a spot for them. And if that's the case, maybe they stay, maybe they leave. Burkle's obviously a local kid. He's from Cedar Rapids. Bramer's just from over in Nebraska. So like they're both, fairly local to the area. Bramer maybe to Nebraska. Maybe that would, if Ben Bramer was going to transfer, my guess is it would be to Nebraska, not to Penn State. I'm not saying that that's going to happen or that I think it's going to happen. Like, I just think that if Bramer was going to transfer, Nebraska makes more sense than Penn State, just in terms of, what he has to compete with there. Redbird, yeah. If Hansen leaves, they're going to go get it back in the portal. We'll see what happens here. So the kids could follow Franklin to Virginia Tech. I would be, if you're a tight end at Penn State, you are loving the staff that just came in. I mean, as much as Penn State liked their tight ends there, Matt Campbell and Taylor Mauser love tight ends even more than that. Like, you're going to be coming into a situation where you're probably going to have more talent on the roster. You're probably going to have a better quarterback. You're going to have a staff that loves to utilize and throw to tight ends. If you're a Penn State tight end, you better think real long and hard about wanting to follow James Franklin to Virginia Tech, because you just lucked into basically the best possible situation, with that staff that's coming in right now. So we'll see. Offensive line, I don't really see anybody. They can, there's some commits, and Penn State can get people in the portal if they need. I'm not sure what their offensive line situation looks like, personnel wise. Defensive line, I would be scared for them to take Dominic Orange if he wasn't graduating. The one that actually is worried about me is Vaye Kekola. I hope he stays. I think he might. I don't know. I really hope Vaye Kekola stays, because I think Ikakula, Trevor Burr, Brennan Black would be an amazing interior of that line. If Trevor Burr leaves, then maybe Cool, something like that. Get that 3, I think, would be a fabulous interior of that offensive line. We'll see. Defensive line, I don't think there's really any pieces there that Penn State's going to want from Iowa State there. Linebacker, the only one I can think of really would be Cooper Ebel, because he's got 2 years left, I want to say. Maybe he's only got 1 year left, but Cooper Ebel may be one. I hope he stays. He's a local kid. He grew up a Cyclone fan, but I could see a big school, maybe even Penn State, going after Cooper Ebel just because he was really, really good last year. I'd probably be pretty surprised to see Caleb Bacon leave. He's a local kid, came up in the walk-on program. I don't really see Caleb Bacon going anywhere. I think the two guys that I would say, okay, they're probably gone. Yeah. Oh yeah. So Carter beat me to it. It's John Tez and Cooper. But their knee injuries are notable. They happened early in the season that I don't know if that'll be enough to scare teams off of taking them, because they should be back for fall camp at least. But if you're looking at like player ratings on College Football 27, John Tez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper are probably going to be the two highest rated guys on the roster, and they'd probably be in the low to mid 90s. They're very, very good players, and they are players that are absolutely good enough to play at literally any program in the country. If I were Penn State and I didn't feel great about my corners, I'd probably go after those two. The question with those two is the knee injury and if that will scare teams off. if it scares teams off enough where they're just not willing to give them like a big paycheck, they could stay. I mean, I don't know. Jeremiah Cooper's only got 1 year left. John Tez has 2 years left, so that's maybe notable. Um, but I would imagine the corners are gone. You're probably right. So then at that point, you're talking Trey Bell and David Coffey, which both of them played well this year, and with another year under their belt, I think they should be fine. They may bring in a transfer from Washington State to play there that knows their system a little bit better. We'll see. At safety, the big one is Marcus Neal. I have heard in the past that Marcus Neal leaving is definitely not a foregone conclusion. I've heard that there's a chance he stays. I don't know what that chance looks like. Marcus Neal is a guy that every program in the college football should be and may be calling Marcus Neal. Like if I were an SEC school that needed a top end safety, Marcus Neal is one of the first guys I'm calling. If I'm Jimmy Rogers, on the defense, Marcus Neal is literally the first person I'm talking to. And you guys are really good at this. You guys beat me to it. The new safeties coach, Ross Watson, coming from Toledo, is a monster. For anybody that does not know, Toledo's secondary graded out, I believe, is the 5th best in college football last year. Their defense has been awesome. Toledo's defensive backs were maybe better than Iowa State's was last year, and that's really saying something. Ross Watson, I hate to see he's an upgrade over Deion Broomfield because we don't know that yet. But as of right now, Ross Watson is about the best possible replacement you could have got for Deion Broomfield. So Marcus Neal, hopefully they can convince him to stay. The defensive scheme should be friendly to him. He's going to have a really good position coach. I really hope they can get Marcus Neal to stay. Jamison Patton, I would guess, would probably stay. I don't know if he's like good enough to get like a big SEC offer. He's obviously an Ankeny kid. He's going to be a senior next year. I would think Jamison Patton would probably stay. Kaijon Cummings Coleman seems like another guy that would probably stay, but I'm not entirely sure there. Freddie says we're going to keep our thicker kicker. Now, are you talking about Carson Rhodes that kicked off in the Colorado game? Or are you talking about Lucas Tenbrock, who has already flipped to Penn State? If you're talking about our thicker kicker in Carson Rhodes from the walk-on lineman from Nevada, probably. I don't know. I would guess probably just because he's from Nevada. But Lucas Tenbrock has already flipped to Penn State. So if that's the thicker kicker you're talking about, Carson Rhodes will probably stay. So I would also like to not have Carson Rhodes be our fucking kicker. Like that would be great. No offense to Carson Rhodes, but I want an actual kicker, please. Kyle Conradi would be another one they really need to hang on to. I don't know what the situation looks like. I don't know if Penn State needs him. I don't know if fucking Iowa needs him. We'll see. I hope Kyle Conradi stays. We really, really, really need Kyle Conradi to stay because not having him last year sucked ass. So, right now, I would say most likely to transfer would be Jontez and Coop. I don't know. I'm not saying that means they're even like over 50% to transfer, but I would say that those two are probably the most likely to transfer. After that, Kyle Conradi, maybe. I don't know. And I don't know what to tell you about Rocco. I don't know what to tell you about Carson Hansen. I don't know what to tell you about Cooper Ebel. I hope they all stay. I don't know if they will. It's possible they do. Maybe they all just have grown over the years, have grown to love Ames, and they decide that they really like the new staff and they like the new scheme and all that. I think bringing back Tyler Roll for offensive coordinator was about the best possible outcome for Iowa State. It's a former coach that we all really liked him. We all really liked his influence on the offense. He's coming back from the NFL. He'll be able to bring like the Lions scheme back with him. He's your best shot at keeping as many possible offensive players as you possibly can get. Um, so we'll see. They've got to, they've over the last week and a half, they've had to get a lot of work done as far as talking to players and getting them convinced here. So, any coaches you think should have been recruited here but didn't? Coaches. Interesting. Good question. Coaches. So what's worth noting, I guess, is there are still a few spots that need to get filled. Like I believe we still need a quarterback. Still need closure on the quarterbacks coach. It seemed there's been social posts from athletes that seem to suggest that Jake Waters is headed to Penn State, but I don't know for sure. He's still listed as on Iowa State's roster as a coach, but we'll see. But John Haycock's also listed as the defensive coordinator, which we already know is not the case. We don't believe we have a tight ends coach yet. I would assume Tyler Roll is going to be the running backs coach as well as the offensive coordinator. And we've got a few defensive spots filled already. I don't know if we've got a linebackers coach yet. We've got a few of those spots already filled. Excellent question about any coaches I think should have been recruited here. Do you think Roll is good? So Roll could be either the tight ends or the running backs coach here. He was the running backs coach here the first time. He was tight ends with the Lions. He could do either. Okay. So linebackers coach is Jesse Bobbitt. He's going to be the linebackers coach. There you go. So Jesse Bobbitt's the linebackers coach. Yeah, Roll could be either running backs or tight ends. I think either one's fine. Whatever one he wants to do, I guess. I'm kind of hoping he's a running backs coach because I think that might be your best shot at keeping Carson Hansen and Abu Sama is if they can have Roll back as their position coach. But I don't know. Obviously, I'm not privy to the conversations behind the scenes or anything like that. So we will see as far as that goes. Obviously the staff is not completely built out, but the couple guys that we have kind of confirmed that I really, really like, as I said, is the first one on the offensive side of the ball. Tyler Roll, amazing hire. I think the scheme he'll bring in will be great. I think it'll fit Iowa State really, really well. I don't think you're going to have it's just a really good system that a few different NFL teams, especially like I said, the Lions are using right now. That is just a good, efficient scheme. Just gets the job done. You don't have to rely on any gimmicks or anything like that. I'm not sure. Then you've got we don't really have any closure yet as far as a quarterbacks coach or a running backs coach. Well, running backs maybe Roll, but maybe not. Quarterbacks coach, I don't think we've got really any clarity yet. I believe we've had some offensive line coach movement here, but I think it was reported yesterday, that I would say its offensive line coach is going to be current Auburn and former Ole Miss offensive line coach Jake Thornton. To the staff, I've heard some good things about him. I've heard other things that I don't know. There's some people that are very excited about it. Auburn's offensive line wasn't great. We'll see. That doesn't necessarily, that doesn't mean he can't do a good job here or anything like that. But so Joe Thornton is Jake Thornton is your offensive line coach. Defensive line coach, I don't believe has been. I think I've heard names floated before, but I haven't heard any confirmed names as far as a defensive line coach. Defensive coordinator and linebackers coach is Jesse Bobbitt, who is also the defensive coordinator for Jimmy Rogers at Washington State and South Dakota State. See there, then obviously I just talked about Ross Watson as the safeties coach, who I think is an all-star. At some point, I think Jesse Bobbitt is on the track to being a head coach at some point. So if he does a good job, he'll probably take a head coaching job at a G5 someplace or an FCS school someplace. And then I would guess Ross Watson would then slide in to be defensive coordinator. He was already a co-defensive coordinator at Toledo. Jesse Bobbitt today in an interview, made sure to tell people that he is the defensive coordinator, not the co-defensive coordinator. It was kind of an odd, it was a really weird comment. But if Jesse Baba decides to leave to go take a head coaching spot, Ross Watson is right there and able to slide in as a defensive coordinator right away. I think that's a perfect guy in waiting there for whenever Jesse Baba decides to take a head coaching position um, down the road. And his track record coaching safeties at Toledo is pretty much impeccable. He was awesome there. I expect the safeties to continue to be a very good group under him. We'll see. I don't know if we've got a corners coach yet. I don't, and maybe they may not split out a corners coach. They may just say defensive backs coach for Russ Watson, and he'll coach the corners and safeties. I'm not sure exactly how they'll structure that, because having separate corners and safeties coaches at Iowa State previously is what prevented them from having a special teams coordinator, because you can only have so many assistant coaches and you can only have so many on the field and so many in the box. And by splitting out corners and safeties, they prevented themselves from having a special teams coordinator, essentially a dedicated special teams coordinator. So we'll see how they handle that down the road as well. But today we did get some enlightenment on the strength and conditioning coach. I believe I want to see if I can find. I think it was Corey Morrissey, I want to say, that had a nice social post about the new, that's my dog, about the new strength coach at Iowa State. Let's see if I can pull that up. My dog is losing her mind. Guessing my wife just got home. Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. Let me pull it up here. Here we go. Yeah. So Chris Campbell, I believe he is actually an Iowa State alum too. He was at UTEP and is now coming in. Corey Morris obviously gets a big thumbs up from Corey Morrissey. Big fan of Chris Campbell. I've heard rumblings of Tom Farniok also coming back, but we will see about that. For those that don't remember, Tom Farniok was a very, very good center for Iowa State back in the day. But Corey, if Corey Morrissey is a fan of Chris Campbell, I'm a fan of Chris Campbell because I'm a fan of Corey Morrissey. Corey Morrissey is an A+ dude. He's come on the Wide Right podcast on our podcast a few different times, the Nightcap a couple times. Corey Morrissey is an A+ dude. If Chris Campbell gets a thumbs up from Corey Morrissey, then Chris Campbell gets the thumbs up from me. So that is currently the staff as it stands and as we know about it. Hopefully we will get some more confirmation the next week as far as a quarterbacks coach, and maybe a running backs or tight ends coach, whichever one Tyler Roll does not coach, as well as to see what they do if they have a corners coach, they have a defensive line coach, how they're going to handle a special teams coordinator, how they're going to handle all that. So hopefully we can get some more clarification on that next week or two. Because right now, I mean, they've got to keep. So Keaton Roscoff has apparently posted on Twitter that he's staying with the new coaching. I mean, I don't think I was worried about him going to Penn State, but him staying and saying I'm with Jimmy, that's a good sign. To get the whole team to stay, you need to start with one guy to kind of get the momentum rolling and say, I'm staying with Jimmy. I'm staying with Jimmy. I'm staying with Jimmy. So glad to see that from Keaton Roscoff. But overall, I think that's all I had for today. I was trying to see if there was any questions in the comments that I didn't get to. If anybody's got any last minute questions they'd like me to answer, I'm definitely throw those in the comments right now. Jace Brown did hit the portal for Kansas State. Worth noting, he also did that last year and then went back to Kansas State. So Jace Brown hitting the portal may or may not mean anything. I would love to have him at Iowa State. I don't think that will happen, but I would love to see him at Iowa State. I would just really like him to not be at Kansas State. Yeah, I saw rumors roll that got sound last night. I think I saw someone post a flight tracker of a plane from Flint to Ames. So I would assume that was probably Tyler Roll. So he's in town now, which is great. I'm very excited to have him as offensive coordinator. I think he's going to be really awesome. Yeah, we had lots of sickos in the Discord over with the flight trackers. I love our Discord, and I love how dedicated our guys, how dedicated everybody is in there to being absolute sickos for Iowa State football. So, all righty, everybody. Appreciate everyone for can we have Coach drop more F bombs? Okay, I do want to talk about this for a second because I thought it was funny. So obviously there was the moment last week with Jimmy going, let's beat the fucking Hawks or whatever. And it was a great moment. It was awesome because Iowa State was down like 12 at that point in time, and they came back and won. And I think there was a lot of people that were really doing some heavy duty pearl clutching after that, especially people outside the Iowa State sphere. A lot of people that are not involved with Iowa State had lots of strong opinions on whether it was okay for Jimmy Rogers to drop the F-bomb at his little introduction at the basketball game the other night. And to that, I say, I don't give a shit because that was awesome. The crowd loved it. The crowd pop was awesome. Everyone was like, hell yeah. And then Iowa State won that game. That's a game that's a moment that, like, if Jimmy Rogers pans out and turns out to be a really good coach for Iowa State, that's going to be like the moment we all look back to is like, that's the moment we knew. That's when we knew Jimmy Rogers was the dude. Because he went back there and said, fuck the Hawks, right? Well, let's beat the fucking Hawks right away. So that's a big moment. I love that moment. It was great. And I appreciated his kind of candor, and I appreciated his honesty. Carter says, any early targets for players entering the portal from other schools? I mean, like kind of mentioned earlier, if you look at anybody leaving Wazoo right now, feels like a potential there. Like their linebacker, his name is escaping, is like Palomo. Obviously right there, I think I saw a couple corners and defensive tackle and defensive lineman from Washington State that seemed to make a lot of sense. From other schools, the punter from South Dakota went in there. I think I saw a defensive saw a defensive lineman from a school in Texas. I'm trying to remember which one now. I've been trying to keep up with it as much as I can. But there's sometimes you just get a lot of posts flying in. I will say though, for anybody that's not in the Discord right now, the people in the Discord have been doing a really good job, have been doing a bang up job of just kind of, crowdsourcing, just guys that have entered the portal. Tyler Ebel, the punter from there. An edge rusher, Jamarian Augustus from UNI. Has entered the portal, 6'3", 235, so he's a little on the smaller side, but 31 tackles, 12 QB pressures last year, so nice little player. We'll see what that looks like at the FCS level. But Max Balloon from Baloun from Washington State is in the portal. Seemed like a guy that makes sense. Washington State tight end Josiah Cornwell could be there. Now he's a tight end. He's either coming here because Gabe Burkle and or Ben Bramer are not playing at Iowa State next year for whatever reason, or he's not coming to Iowa State because they've got Cooper Alexander as well. Like, Iowa State theoretically should have a loaded tight end room that would really give him no reason to transfer here. Tony Freeman is a receiver from Washington State that I know they've been looking at, that I know as is in the portal as well. Washington State's D lineman Mike Sandio, Sandjo, Sandio, 6'2", 295-pound defensive tackle. He's in the portal. There's a lot of these guys that are in the portal right now that seem like obvious targets here. We'll see. I've seen a few other places, from a guy from Miami, Ohio. Like I said, if anybody's interested in this kind of stuff, the transfer portal chat here in our Discord, I won't post too much of it here, but let me I can kind of screen share what's going on here, so anybody that's not in the Discord can see what it is, kind of what is involved here. You can go through here and you can see we've got lots and lots of discussion here. All sorts of channels here. We've got gaming channels. We've got miscellaneous channels. We've got pro sports channels, Iowa State basketball and football. We've got Big 12 channels. We've got all sorts of stuff here. We've even got channels for like, music, movies, cooking, pets, all that good stuff. Fire and Adelaide Discord's an awesome place. And they've, the people in there have been doing a great job of finding posts from players that could potentially be targets here as well. So, um, anyways, I think we'll wrap it up for this week, though. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. We'll be back again next week to see if we get any more updates on the roster, coaching staff, all that stuff. Potentially be, currently Iowa State basketball is number 4 on the men's side. I believe they're still at number 10 on the women's side, something like that. I know they didn't move after beating Iowa for some damn reason. Oh, Car, is this a new thing? Oh, the stream. The first episode of this was like the first week of January this year. So in a few weeks, this will be turning essentially one week or 1 year old. End of January. Well, this is episode 47, and I've done it pretty much every week. I think I've only missed 1 or 2 weeks, so we're getting real close to kind of the 1 year anniversary of the first show of this. So, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you guys again next week. See what we get for new news on this one, and everybody have a great rest of your week. And go Cyclones.